"Grandma," little Emma whispered, tugging at the edge of the soft quilt draped over Rose's lap, "tell me a story, a real one, something that happened to you." Rose smiled, her lips trembling slightly as she looked down at the child. Her face was a map of time, lines and folds carved by years of worry, love, sacrifice, and grief, but her eyes, deep and hazel, sparkled with tenderness. She placed her gnarled hand over Emma's small one and sighed softly. "You want to hear about when I was young?" she asked, her voice gentle like a lullaby. "All right, but it's not an easy story. It's filled with love and pain. There's laughter and loss. But it's mine, and if you're ready to listen, I'll tell you." Emma nodded quickly, her eyes wide like the sky itself. Rose drew a deep breath and began. "I was born in a small town, Emma," she started. "Not too far from here, a place where everyone knew everyone. The streets were lined with maple trees that turned red in the fall, and in winter, the snow would blanket the ground like a soft white quilt." She smiled wistfully. "My mother used to bake bread every morning. The smell would fill the whole house, and I would wake up to it, still half asleep, smelling warm butter and cinnamon." Her fingers traced the edge of the quilt, as if smoothing away time itself. "My father was a kind man. He worked at the post office, came home with stories of letters and packages from faraway places. We didn't have much money, but we had enough." The little girl's eyes shone with wonder. "I was married young, to a man named Henry. He was quiet, gentle, the kind of man who'd fix anything that broke. We built our home with our own hands, planks, nails, and hope." "Then came your father," she whispered, brushing Emma's hair gently. "I carried him for 9 months, and when he was born, I felt my heart change. It wasn't just love, it was something deeper, like my soul was tied to his." She chuckled softly, remembering. "He had your eyes when he was a baby, round and curious, always watching everything. Even as a toddler, he would crawl after butterflies in the yard and giggle when they fluttered just out of reach." The room grew quieter as the memories washed over her like soft waves. "I promised him the world. I would never let him feel afraid. I would be his shield from hardship, his warmth when nights were cold. I took care of him all by myself," she continued. "Henry passed away when Michael was only 6. It was a sudden illness. We didn't even see it coming." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "I didn't let that stop me. I took up work wherever I could, cleaning houses, sewing clothes for neighbors, cooking meals in restaurants late into the night." She smiled with pride, though it wavered. "I gave up new dresses, skipped meals, but I never let him see me weak. I wanted him to dream big, to stand tall." The little girl's eyes glistened as she held her grandmother's hand tighter. "Did he like school, Grandma?" "Oh yes," Rose smiled. "He was smart and kind, but sometimes shy. I stayed up with him when he couldn't sleep, read books by candlelight, and cheered him on in every school play." She sighed. "I used to lie awake at night, listening to his soft breathing, whispering promises into the darkness. You'll be strong. You'll be brave. I'll always be here." As the years passed, Michael grew into a handsome young man, she whispered. He went to college, earned a scholarship, and eventually started his own business. "I couldn't have been prouder." Her eyes shimmered with pride and fear. "But success is a tricky thing. It demands more and more. And before long, work swallowed him whole." She looked at Emma carefully, as if searching for understanding. "At first, he still visited, came home on weekends, brought gifts, told me about his dreams. But slowly, his calls became fewer, his visits rarer." The crack in her voice was palpable. "I told myself, he's doing this for a reason. He's building a life. He's taking care of his family. I swallowed my loneliness, smiled through the ache. One rainy afternoon, he came to see me, Rose whispered. His face was tired, but his eyes soft. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said. I want to be here for you, but things are hard. Maybe it's best if you moved somewhere you can get more care. A nice place, comfortable, safe. I'll come every weekend. I promise. His words were careful, like he feared hurting me. Rose's eyes welled up, but she nodded. I believed him. I packed a small bag with clothes, his childhood drawings, and a photo of his first day at school. I left without a tear. I told myself this was for him, for his peace of mind. The room grew still as Rose's voice turned quieter. The old age home was clean, organized. The people were kind. But nothing there smelled like home. No memories in the walls. No love in the corners. She looked at Emma, her eyes filled with longing. I kept waiting by the window, every morning, every evening. I watched the gate, listened for the sound of his car. Sometimes, I thought I saw him in the distance, but it was never him. I wrote him letters every week, she whispered. Sometimes twice a week. I told him about the garden, how I missed his laughter, how I forgave him for being busy. She smiled sadly. I wrote about how proud I was, how much I loved him, how I missed his childhood smile. But I never sent them. She traced her fingers across the air, as if feeling the pages she never mailed. I didn't want him to feel guilty or burdened. I wanted him to be happy. As the seasons changed, so did the silence, she murmured. Calls stopped altogether. The calendar pages fluttered past. I stopped setting the table for two. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Didn't he miss you? Rose sighed deeply. I think, maybe he did, she whispered. But he was lost in his own world. One winter night. I whispered his name for the last time, she said, her voice breaking. I wrapped myself in the quilt, held his photo, and drifted away. Her eyes closed briefly as if reliving the moment. I waited for his car to come, but it never did. She opened her eyes again, looking at Emma with a soft smile. Love, my dear, doesn't depend on time, or distance, or promises made in passing. It lives in the heart. It waits, it forgives, and it never stops. Emma hugged her grandmother tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'll always remember, she whispered. Rose smiled, brushing a strand of hair from the child's face. That's all a mother wants. The years passed quietly in the small, sunlit room at the old age home. Grandma Rose's hands had grown frail, her hair silvered with age, but her heart remained steadfast. She still thought of Michael every day, her son who had once promised to always be there. She never complained, never scolded, and never stopped loving him, even as the silence stretched endlessly between them. On a Tuesday afternoon, the phone on her bedside table rang. Rose's heart leaped. Maybe it was him. Maybe today he would come. She reached for the receiver, her hand trembling slightly. Hello, she said softly, hope dripping from her voice. A receptionist's voice replied, Hello, Mrs. Turner. This is the administration. We're calling regarding a package left for you. Her chest tightened. A package? From Michael? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. No, ma'am, the receptionist replied kindly. It appears to be from an unknown sender. We just wanted to let you know it's at the front desk. Rose's shoulders slumped. She thanked them, her fingers brushing the air where his hand should have been. She smiled faintly, forcing herself to believe in the small kindnesses of strangers. Meanwhile, Michael's life was moving at full speed. His company had expanded beyond the city, his home filled with guests, meetings, and constant activity. Yet in the quiet moments, rare and fleeting, he would think of his mother. Not often, perhaps, but enough for a pang of guilt to pierce his chest. He remembered the promises, the letters he never answered, the phone calls he always postponed. "Mom's fine," he told himself one evening while scrolling through photos of his kids. "She's in good care. I'm doing the right thing. I'm busy, but I'm responsible." Yet, deep inside, a whisper nagged at him, something he refused to name. One summer day, Michael decided to visit, almost on impulse. He parked outside the old building, the familiar ivy climbing its walls. It smelled different here, sterile and clean, lacking the warmth of the home he had left behind. He hesitated, his fingers tight around the steering wheel. Inside, the receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" I'm here to see my mother," Michael said, voice catching slightly. "Michael Turner." A moment of silence. "I'm sorry, sir. Mrs. Turner passed away last year." The words hit him like a freight train. His body froze. "Passed? What? When? How?" he stammered. She handed him a small envelope from the administration desk. "This was found in her room. She wanted you to have it." Michael's hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside was a note in Rose's delicate handwriting. "Michael, I have always loved you. Even when you were too busy to see me, I forgave you. I hope you can forgive yourself." Then he noticed the box on the counter, taped and worn, filled with letters. Hundreds of pages, each one painstakingly written, recounting every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment she had loved him without complaint. His chest burned. He sank into a chair, shoving the letters into his lap, and began to read. "I worked through nights so you could eat, so you could study, so you could grow into the man I always dreamed you would be. I waited for you by the window, hoping to hear the sound of your car, hoping to see your smile, hoping to feel your hand in mine. I forgave you, even when you never came." Page after page, Michael felt the weight of years collapse on him. Every choice he had made, every postponed call, every excuse. It was all written in her handwriting, carved in ink, permanent and haunting. He realized the truth too late. His mother's love had never faltered, but he had been blind to it. Tears fell freely. He clutched the letters to his chest, his body shaking. "Why didn't I see it sooner?" he thought. "Why did I let my life, my work, my pride, get in the way of her love?" He read a passage aloud, choking on the words. "Love doesn't wait for convenience, Michael. Love waits until the end, even when it's quiet, even when it's unseen, even when you forget it exists. Remember me, remember my heart." He looked around the room where she had spent her final days, imagining her sitting in her rocking chair, humming softly, waiting for him. The emptiness was suffocating. Michael's guilt was a living thing. He wandered through her empty room, touching the quilt she had sewn, the vase she had kept on the table, the photographs of their small, simple life. Every object whispered her presence, every corner reflected her love. He couldn't stop thinking about the moments he had stolen from her, the birthday dinners missed, the Sunday walks skipped, the quiet evenings she had spent alone. Each memory was a knife twisting deeper into his chest. "I've ruined everything," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I've been so selfish, and she loved me anyway." As Michael sifted through the letters, he discovered something unexpected. One envelope, labeled in bold handwriting, "Open this only when you are ready to forgive yourself." Inside was a short letter, filled with her final wisdom. "Michael, if you are reading this, it means you finally realize the depth of my love. Do not waste your life in guilt. Live it fully. Help others. Cherish those who are still with you. My love will never leave you, even if my presence has. The words hit him harder than anything else. Rose had anticipated his remorse, had forgiven him long before he could forgive himself. Her love transcended her death. Michael sank to the floor, holding the letters, sobbing uncontrollably. It was a mercy and a torment all at once. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light through the windows. Michael finally understood what his mother had been trying to teach him all his life. Love is patient. Love is unconditional. Love is waiting, even when the world has moved on. And yet, he had learned it too late, only after her passing. The weight of that realization changed him. He vowed to honor her memory by living differently, by loving more openly, cherishing those who mattered, and never taking anyone's presence for granted. The moment Michael left the old age home, the world outside seemed strangely silent. Cars honked, dogs barked, and people rushed past, but he felt invisible, trapped inside a storm he couldn't escape. The box of letters pressed against his chest like a weight he could barely carry. Every step he took, memories of his mother, her gentle touch, her quiet forgiveness, her unwavering love, haunted him. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark of his apartment, clutching a letter that had fallen open. Her words taunted him, not with anger, but with heartbreaking clarity. Love doesn't wait for convenience, Michael. Love waits until the end, even when it's quiet, even when it's unseen, even when you forget it exists. He buried his face in his hands. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I go to her? His voice cracked under the weight of sorrow. I had everything, and I gave her nothing. The room felt colder than the winter night outside. Shadows from the streetlights slanted across the walls, twisting and stretching as if mocking him. Michael realized that this emptiness was more than grief. It was a void of his own making. Grief, however, doesn't come alone. It carried with it a burning anger. Anger at life, at time, at responsibilities, at his own choices. He replayed every missed visit, every postponed phone call, every excuse he had made. If only I had gone yesterday. If only I had driven one more hour. If only I had picked up the phone. His fists clenched. He slammed the letters onto the coffee table. The paper rattled, echoing in the silent apartment. But no matter how hard he shook his anger out, it wouldn't lift. He couldn't undo the past. He could only make the future better, or perhaps punish himself for being blind. 4 hours, Michael sat, staring at the letters, rereading passages, tracing the handwriting that had nurtured and forgiven him. Then, slowly, a thought crept into his mind, a plan. Not a plan of vengeance toward others, but a way to expose, to confront, to awaken the world to the consequences of neglect. If he couldn't undo the pain done to his mother, maybe he could ensure no one else suffered the same. He would show everyone the cost of taking love for granted. He opened his laptop. He began typing her story, pouring every memory, every sacrifice, every letter into words. He wanted people to feel it, the heartbreak, the loss, the quiet forgiveness that had been ignored. People need to understand what they're missing. People need to see what I ignored. People need to feel her love, before it's too late. In the following days, Michael became obsessed. He reread the letters until they blurred, losing himself in the memories. He kept a small notebook by his side, scribbling ideas of how to honor her memory, and how to make the people in his life truly understand the gravity of neglect and lost love. He called his employees, friends, and even distant relatives. He invited them to hear a story, not just a story of one woman's life, but a cautionary tale. He wanted them to understand that life is fleeting, that love is fragile, and that forgiveness can outlive the living. Every call was tinged with shame. Every conversation reminded him of the times he had failed, the opportunities he had wasted. And yet, sharing her story gave him a strange solace, a way to channel the storm raging inside him. Michael's obsession didn't stop there. He found himself returning to the old neighborhood, walking past the house where his mother had lived alone before moving to the old-age home. The streets had changed slightly, the neighbors older, but he imagined her there, waiting by the window, humming softly, waiting for him to come home. His grief mingled with anger now, not toward anyone else, but himself. How could he have been so blind? So self-absorbed? So careless with the only person who had never stopped loving him? I need to do something, he whispered to the empty street. I need to make it matter. One night, sitting in his apartment surrounded by her letters, Michael realized that the first step toward forgiveness wasn't punishment. It was understanding, reflection, and sharing. He decided to use his work, his influence, his wealth, and his voice to honor his mother's memory. He would launch a foundation for caregivers and elderly people living in isolation. He would speak about neglect, about love, about responsibility. It would be his form of atonement. It would be his revenge against ignorance, not against anyone, but against the mistakes he himself had made and the system that allowed elders to feel forgotten. He scribbled notes late into the night, planning events, outreach programs, talks, and stories. Every plan carried the imprint of his mother, the warmth of her love, the patience of her forgiveness, and the lessons she had tried to teach him. Yet, even with these plans, Michael's heart ached. He would walk past mirrors, seeing his reflection, and see not the man he had become, but the son he had failed to be. He imagined Rose, smiling gently, looking at him with disappointment, yet still loving him unconditionally. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced he could still hear her voice whispering, "I forgive you, Michael, but remember me." And in those moments, he would break down completely, sobbing into his hands, clutching a pillow, or holding one of the letters like a lifeline. He realized that grief and guilt could be tools, not just for reflection, but for action. He couldn't bring his mother back, but he could ensure her love, her story, her lessons, survived. By now, Michael's emotions were a volatile mix: sorrow, regret, anger, obsession, and a desperate need to make amends. He decided that his next steps would be dramatic, not petty revenge, but shocking, unforgettable reminders of the cost of neglect. He began contacting friends and colleagues who had ignored elderly relatives, sharing his mother's story to confront them with reality. He planned a public exhibition of her letters, artwork, and photographs to show how much love goes unnoticed. He imagined leaving anonymous notes to families, teaching them what it felt like to be forgotten by those they love most. Every idea, every action, was imbued with the weight of his mother's life, her love, and her death. And so, Michael's journey shifted. No longer was it just grief, it became a mission. A way to honor his mother, punish himself, and shock the world into recognizing the preciousness of love and time. He was preparing for acts that would stir hearts, open eyes, and make people question their priorities. But the true climax, the execution of his plan, was still ahead. And it would be as dramatic, emotional, and shocking as the years he had lost. The winter wind cut through the city streets as Michael stepped out of his car. The weight of the letters was gone. He had read them all, memorized the pain, and absorbed the lessons. Now, he had something else, a plan. Not a petty revenge, not against any one person, but a mission to make the world feel what he had felt. The emptiness, the guilt, the consequences of neglecting the ones we love most. He called it Rose's Reckoning. Michael started with his friends and colleagues, people who had elderly parents, grandparents, or loved ones they rarely visited. Invitations came in the form of polite messages, but when they arrived at the venue, they were met with an exhibit that shocked them into silence. Photographs lined the walls, smiling faces of parents, grandparents, handwritten letters never sent, birthdays alone, beds left empty, and meals eaten in silence. Every detail of Rose's life, every sacrifice she had made, every moment Michael had failed her, was displayed for them to see. This is disturbing, one of his old friends whispered, eyes wide. It's reality, Michael said softly, standing in the corner, his presence quiet but commanding. Some of us wake up too late. He watched as tears formed, as guilt and empathy collided. His revenge wasn't violent, but it was devastating. It left them shaken, reflective, and uncomfortably aware of how they had taken love for granted. Next, he went online, sending anonymous letters to families across the city. Each message told a story, in a mother's handwriting, of love and loss. They were short, haunting, and personal. I stayed awake all night, waiting for you. I forgave you. I loved you. And now, I am gone. Parents read them aloud to each other, children overheard, and the city began murmuring. Michael watched from a distance, unseen, as guilt and awareness rippled through households. He didn't want revenge for himself, he wanted it for his mother. He wanted people to feel the weight of neglect, to realize the cost of ignoring those who love them unconditionally. The third act of his plan was more direct. Michael organized a citywide event, a memorial for the elderly forgotten by their children. Names, faces, and letters filled the hall. Candles flickered in the dim light, casting long shadows over the audience. He stepped onto the stage. This is for Rose Turner, he said, voice steady but filled with raw emotion. And for every parent, every grandparent, every elder whose love went unnoticed, unappreciated, or ignored. He read aloud letters from Rose, her handwriting alive with love, patience, and forgiveness. People cried openly. Some collapsed in tears. Some screamed internally at their own neglect. Michael stood firm, letting the grief, the emotion, and the truth do its work. This is what neglect feels like, he said. This is what love ignored feels like. But his revenge wasn't just public, it was personal. Michael sought out those who had truly wronged their parents, those who had ignored and abandoned them. He met them in offices, homes, cafes, always calm, collected, but with a presence that demanded attention. He handed them letters. Not just any letters. Letters his mother had written. Letters that revealed the depth of patience, sacrifice, and unwavering love of women who had devoted their lives. He didn't yell. He didn't attack. He simply handed over the truth, watching their faces pale as the weight of neglect sank in. Do you understand? He asked softly. Do you see what you lost? Or are you waiting until it's too late, like I did? Few could answer. Most could only stare, tears streaming silently, minds reeling from the emotional impact. Then came the most shocking twist. Michael revealed something unexpected. He made a video of Rose's letters, photographs, and personal items, narrating her story in his own voice, blending grief with reverence. He uploaded it anonymously, allowing it to spread across social media. It went viral. People everywhere were drawn into the tragedy, compelled to confront the reality of their relationships. Comments poured in. I never called my mom this week. I'm going now. This is my grandmother. I cried reading this. I can't believe I've been so blind. Michael watched the world respond, feeling the ghost of his mother's presence in every tear, every realization, every changed heart. His revenge wasn't cruelty, it was awakening. A painful, beautiful shock to those who had taken love for granted. Despite the public spectacle and the viral impact, Michael's own grief remained. No action could bring back the quiet evenings, the small smiles, the warmth of her hand. Each success in awakening others reminded him of what he had lost. He sat alone in his apartment one night, the letters spread around him. I've done all I can, he whispered, voice raw. I've made them feel, maybe not exactly what I felt, but enough to understand her sacrifice. Enough to honor her. Yet, even as he said it, he felt the emptiness. His revenge had been executed, but his pain remained. He realized then that some losses are permanent, some mistakes irreversible, and some love, no matter how loud, how visible, or how shared, cannot be returned once the heart it belonged to is gone. In the middle of his reflection, Michael received an email. The sender was anonymous. Inside was a story eerily similar to his own, a mother's letters, a son's neglect, a viral wake-up call. The email included a note. We've all learned from Rose Turner. Her love echoes beyond her life. Some lessons are too late, some can still save lives. He froze. Someone had taken the story he had unleashed and amplified it, bringing awareness, forcing empathy, ensuring that Rose's legacy would ripple outward. The impact was no longer just his own, it belonged to the world. And he realized, his mother's love had become immortal. Michael didn't revel in triumph. There was no laughter, no satisfaction in victory. There was only the knowledge that the world had glimpsed the depth of a mother's love, and perhaps, just perhaps, others would act before it was too late. He had shocked the world, but the personal void, the missing warmth of Rose's hand, remained. That void would never be filled. Yet in that void, there was clarity. The letters, the exhibits, the videos, the public awakenings, they were all a bridge between loss and memory. Michael understood now that revenge wasn't destruction, it was transformation. The pain, guilt, and grief had been weaponized, not to harm, but to awaken. The city had quieted. The viral videos, the letters, the exhibits, they had left their mark. Families called their parents, hugged grandparents, wrote letters, and made time where they had previously let life's busyness fill the gaps. Somewhere, Michael knew, his mother's legacy of love had begun to echo in the world. But for him, the personal void remained. Every evening, he sat alone in the apartment where Rose's letters still rested on the desk, her handwriting a testament to the devotion he had taken for granted. He read them again, not to relive the pain, but to remember the warmth, the sacrifice, the unconditional love that had defined her life. One rainy afternoon, Michael returned to the old age home, not to confront, not to mourn, but to reflect. The halls were quiet. The rooms, now occupied by other residents, carried faint echoes of laughter and whispered memories. He walked slowly past the room where Rose had spent her final days. The blankets, the chair, the small desk where she had written letters, all gone. And yet, her presence lingered in the air, intangible but unmistakable. He closed his eyes and imagined her rocking chair creaking softly, her frail hands holding his as she had held Emma's, telling stories late into the evening. He imagined the soft strength of her voice, the gentle wisdom in every word. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I hope I've made you proud, even if it's too late for me to make it up to you directly." Michael's mission had started as grief and guilt, but it ended as purpose. He continued the foundation he had begun in Rose's honor, creating programs for elderly care, sending volunteers to visit those who felt forgotten, and sharing stories of love, patience, and sacrifice. He held workshops, exhibitions, and online campaigns, spreading the lessons Rose had left behind. And with every life he touched, every relationship he helped repair, he felt her love guiding him. It wasn't a replacement for her presence, but it was a continuation of her legacy. Sitting in his study one quiet evening, Michael reflected on the past. The grief had not vanished. The guilt was not fully gone. But something deeper had taken root, understanding. He realized that love requires action, presence, and attention. Promises mean nothing without follow-through. Time waits for no one, and sometimes, you realize the depth of love only after it's gone. He opened Rose's letters one last time. Her words, her patience, forgiveness, and unwavering devotion spoke to him as clearly as ever. Michael, if you are reading this, it means you finally understand. Love is not just felt, it is lived. Never wait to show it. Never let it go unspoken. He placed the letters in a frame, setting them on his desk as a permanent reminder. Every morning, when he worked, he saw her words. Every evening, when he returned home, he felt her presence. Her love had survived the silence, the distance, and even death itself. Sometimes, late at night, Michael would walk alone, imagining Rose beside him, sharing a quiet smile, whispering encouragement, or brushing a stray hair from his forehead. The void of her absence remained, but he carried her love in every action, every choice, and every relationship he nurtured. And he knew one thing for certain: love, when given freely and without expectation, never truly dies. It waits. It teaches. It transforms. And sometimes, it demands that we change before it is too late. In the end, Michael's story, and Rose's, became a testament not to revenge, nor to loss alone, but to the enduring power of love, the consequences of neglect, and the quiet strength of a mother who forgave even when she was forgotten. Through grief, guilt, and shocking revelations, he had learned the hardest lesson of all: to value those who love us unconditionally, before it's too late. And in that lesson, Rose lived on, in his heart, in every act of kindness he performed, and in every life her story touched.